Then, have you ever wanted to tell a story underground?
Uh, a tale from the underside.
Tales from the Crypt,
Yeah,
particularly.
Tales from the Crypts. Yeah.
Tangerine. This
Ah,
is The Wheel, episode 2. So, if you don't remember, I have a series now where I have asked about 20 of my friends, or I think I have 20 game recommendations, so I must have asked like 20 people for
you must have at least
recommendations.
20
I,
friends.
ha- I have 20 friends, apparently. I've asked 20 people to recommend games, and I've put them on a giant wheel which I spin. And every time I spin on their game, I play it, complete it, and then I spin the wheel again as a way to see a bunch of games that I never would have picked for myself. And so far, it's been pretty good. And Undertale is one of these. And then there's a game after this which I never would have picked for myself, and maybe I shouldn't have? Question mark. But we'll get into that. Um,
Yeah.
so this is a game I've wanted to play for a very long time. I've always wanted to try this game. I am a big fan of expectation subverting games. You know, I'm always trying to find the next secret horror game, because
Yeah.
I just love games that are hidden within games. I love that sort of um, Russian doll approach to game design where you're just trying to hide systems inside systems, and I think it's so interesting from a gameplay point. Um,
Yeah.
But if you're sitting here and going, "What the hell is Undertale?" and you have no idea what Undertale is, I recommend you to just leave right now or skip to the next game section because Undertale again. I play a lot of these games. I play the Outer Wilds. I play, you know, Daniel Mullins games, and those are sort of games where I'm like, please go into this blind because you're going to
Yeah.
ruin your game experience if you don't go into this blind. I think. Unfortunately, I feel like Undertale's at a point where it's so famous now that it's hard to go in without at least knowing something about the game. I think the reason it's critically acclaimed is some of the subversions that the game itself does. Um, Shout out to
I
Toby
think.
Fox because
Yeah.
like the ideas of the game and the music is really fucking like everyone's heard Megalovania by now. Like by now you must have heard that fucking
Yeah.
song. I didn't hear it in the game, so that goes to
Oh,
show
you
you what
play
happens.
differently.
Yeah. So I think at some point we'll go into major spoilers for the story, but for now I'll keep it at a non-spoiler point, and then I will go into um, mate. I'll do a timestamp, right? You'll write one down for people who don't want
Yeah.
major
Yeah.
spoilers, right? Let's just go into the basics. So the way Undertale works is it is a RPG. Is it made an RPG maker? I feel like it might be based on it having no options. Um,
Yeah. Maybe.
you open the
There's
game and it.
there's other stuff in it though that I'm like I doubt it might be like inspired by.
Oh, I think it's Game Maker Studio. Damn, it's a
Okay.
Game Maker, so it is one of those like indie, sort
Yeah.
of smaller scale indie studio sort of things. I've turned the volume down on the thing because the text can be quite loud when it's like going across like. But the idea is it is one of those classic like turn-based RPGs that you all know and love. But the twist is that it doesn't explain this to you, but at any point you can choose to not kill your opponent. And the idea is that to not kill your opponent, you have to figure out how to not kill your opponent. That's sort of like the gameplay of the non-violent approach.
Yeah.
So you have to try and figure out like if your person wants compliments, if you need to hug them, if it's a dog, if you need to pet them or something like that, or throw a ball for them or something like that. I love at the start of the game, it's like the tutorial section, and this character will not let you fight anything. She keeps scaring everything away and like hiding behind pillars,
Yeah.
stopping you from
You
getting
know
hurt.
you're not learning anything because she's holding your hand.
What's her name?
Literally her.
Toriel or something?
Toriel, I think.
Toriel apparently is in Lord of the Rings. Toriel, like Tor. Yeah, Toriel. So this is the first character you will meet. Well, the first character you meet is Flowey,
Yeah.
who is sort of like a tutorial in himself, where he teaches you that The main
I don't trust
gameplay
anyone.
of attacks is when you get attacked, it's not as simple as, old school RPGs where it's just a cutscene and you just take a random amount of damage. You're a physical heart in a little gameplay space, and you have to move your heart around to dodge attacks. Which I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's a cool idea.
And collect healing pellets.
Let's very quickly go into the technical stuff, like the actual game experience, just launching the game basically, before we go into like the core stuff that I really like. Some small stuff to complain about. The game is very bare bones. The options menu is full screen, yes.
Yeah.
There is no volume slider. There's no key rebinding. If you want to rebind your keys, you have to basically install a third-party program to change which key you're pressing, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because I think the default keys, it's like arrow keys to move, and then it's like shift and control or shift and space to like accept or decline, which is like very, very old school style, which people don't really use anymore.
Yeah.
I think I played it on a controller because it was a lot easier, except for the fact that it was set up for the Nintendo controllers. So it was
Okay.
B to confirm, A to cancel, which really confuses me as an Xbox player, where I'm trying to press A to confirm and B to cancel.
Yeah, I have to really think about that and like translate from Xbox to Nintendo.
It's fine. I think, like, as someone, I switch between keyboard and mouse and controller quite a lot. I would recommend playing this with a controller because there's honestly not that many buttons. I mean, you can. I think some people don't like using the analog stick for when you have to dodge things as the heart. I played the entire game with an analog stick and I didn't really find it too hard, so I think it was fine. But you could always just use the D-pad if you're really worried about putting like individual left, right, up and down inputs in. But anyway, that's the technical stuff aside. Gameplay-wise, I think for the first couple of hours I was really confused in terms of like what I was supposed to be doing. Because I went in with the knowledge that, okay, so I went in with the knowledge that if you kill something, you're essentially like locking your save file, that you will always have that kill on the game is literally set up so if you kill something when you play this game, it will permanently change your save file every time you play through it, unless you go into like a file registry edit. You won't be able to change that, which I think is a really interesting thing, but obviously it's a hard thing to go into blind. But I think the idea is that they wanted people to go into this and go around and go, oh, it's a normal RPG, and start playing a normal RPG. And then once they realized what they had done and the consequences of the actions that came from that, then they would be like, oh shit, like that's what makes it impactful and memorable, I think, in a lot of ways.
Yeah. But
you
knew that going in already.
I went in the knowledge that it was an RPG that subverted expectations by, I don't know, how soon do we put a spoiler thing up now? Because the thing is, I don't know. Let's just I
think we're getting pretty close to
just put the spoiler thing up. It's
all right.
I think I'll just say I think it takes a couple of hours to get into, and then if you can get past that first couple of hours, you should be fine. And I think the game's worth playing. But let's put up the spoiler thing now. So the idea is that if you kill, like, you normally play RPGs, you go around killing everything, and you get experience from that. But a lot of the time, the characters that you fight are actually interesting personalities that you can talk to, and you realize you can befriend them and stuff instead. And even like the character Toriel, she is like a character you can kill, even though she's like this really nice character to you.
Yeah,
and
but she's a monster.
Yeah, so everyone in the ruins is a monster, and you're a human. But that's important to the story because there's a barrier that's stopping the monsters from getting out, and they essentially need a human soul in order to get out. They need 7 human souls, and you're the 7th human that's fallen down here, sort of thing. So all the monsters are trying to kill you, sort of thing, to take you to the king, in order
Yeah.
to use him to get out of the Undertale, because there was a giant war between the humans and the um, monsters, which led to them creating the barrier to trap the monsters in, basically.
It
Um,
kind of, in a way, it's kind of an excuse to like always be like almost like kind of force you, not force you, but like encourage you to fight, even if like you decide to go like pacifist, I suppose.
yeah, it's interesting because when you do the genocide run version, you get XP and gold. But when you're I played the true neutral run, which you need to do to play the true pacifist run, and then I was true pacifist. So I never killed anyone in the game. That was my intention going in, was to see what the true pacifist route was like.
Yeah.
Because it was hard to do that after if you did a genocide run, because of the permanent save. And I think it was pretty interesting the way that you don't get rewarded for being a pacifist, really, other than you get to interact with these characters and befriend them. Like, you get these extra cutscenes, and I think you get a couple of upgrades on your phone that you wouldn't otherwise get. But you get some gold, but you don't get very much gold, and you don't get experience. You don't get stronger, which is important because the final boss of the pacifist run, he destroys your mercy button because he feels like he doesn't deserve mercy.
Yeah.
So you have to fight him, even as part of the pacifist run, which I think is really interesting, where the final fight of the genocide fight against Sans is really interesting because it's a really hard fight, despite you going and putting all these points into attacks and becoming stronger and having more health, right? But the thing that makes the pacifist run really hard is that you have to fight while still being level 1, so you're very weak, sort of thing, which that makes it really
Yeah.
interesting, which I like how they're both balanced, sort of thing. But yeah, overall, I think like the first couple of hours, I think if you're going, especially if you're going for the pacifist run and you're not looking anything up, I think it's going to be a bit, I would say, frustrating
Sure.
to go like, well, how am I supposed to know like when I have how am I supposed to know when I have like successfully pacified a character, sort of thing? Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't get explained to you straight away, which is kind of annoying. Like, something I wish I knew going in, which gets told to you kind of like sort of just after the tutorialized bit, is that once you have pacified a creature, its name turns to yellow, which is really useful to know, because otherwise you'll just
Right.
keep like trying to tell jokes or making them laugh and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure like if I actually have pacified this creature in order to leave. Another thing you should know is you can, unless it's a boss, you can pretty much flee from any creature. You don't have to try and console every creature. It is important to try and console creatures though, because that's how you gain gold, is by mercy. Using mercy on creatures is how you get gold, and gold's important to buying health items, because the whole time that you're going to be trying to convince monsters to have mercy on you, they're going to be attacking you.
Yeah.
So it's important to keep yourself alive, and you can also buy like armor and items in order to help you, raise your defenses or stuff like that. I think that a lot of the boss fights are really, really cool in this game because they are so very different in a lot of ways. They also subvert your expectations, where one of the boss fights will just keep going on forever unless you flee from the boss, and then you the Undyne boss fight, and essentially what you have to do is keep fleeing, and then Undyne will not let you flee, so she'll keep chasing after you, and you have to like kite her into the lava area. And because she's wearing like this clunky armor, it will she will just like pass out, and you can just give her a glass of water, and then she's fine, and that's how you get like the pacifist version of that.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to like be clever with like how you win in a way, or if like investigate the
like
fights.
there's a robot boss where he's constantly giving you style points, and you can get more style points by like busting moves as your turn, while you're like trying to dodge the things he's throwing at you.
Right.
There's also stuff it's insane how much depth that Toby Fox put into this game. That there's a section where you can type in a bunch of stuff, and it gives you more style points based on how much you typed in. And there's like specific stuff that you type in that will give you more points. So if you type a really long sentence, it'll give you 100 points. But if you type like Toby Fox in, it will give you like 300 points. Or if you type in "I love you" or something, or you type in compliments, it will give you a bunch of points. Oh, I love that you're trying to move this rock in order to get on the Switch, and the rock just starts moving in the wrong direction to control you. Is that helpful?
I like this bit. This
and then he's like, "Whoa, wait! I wasn't supposed. You didn't want me to stay there, did you?" I like that. It feels like in a lot of ways the game's kind of trolling you.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, which I think's kind of funny. There's lots of little things around here where you could walk past these and they wouldn't be important to most people, but it's so interesting the amount of detail they went into where they'll just have like a piece of cheese and a mouse hole, and it'll be like, you wonder if the mouse ever went to get the piece of cheese, and you can come back after finishing the game and you can interact with that, that piece of cheese again and the mouse and see if you interacted with it, or the spaghetti in the microwave if you ever defrosted the spaghetti and stuff like that. It's just really, really small things where it's like this game was essentially designed by mostly one person. I think if you read the credits, it's like Toby, and then there is one other person that he worked with that helped him design a lot of the characters, but I think it's mostly like a one-man crew, and it's amazing. Like, I think it's based on the... Oh, this music's a banger. I think it's mostly based on the fact that it's such a simple system in terms of like the sprites and the fact that it's made in like Game Maker sort of thing. Is that allows him to, because a lot of that stuff was quicker to make, it let him go much deeper into everything else, which I think is really, really cool.
I think in a way, like, because they couldn't. I mean, not couldn't, but like because like limited by the engine in a way. That I was going to be really creative with it.
Yeah, I think like the music in this game. So I think it's like legit in terms of like, I think it like makes sense in music theory. Even I saw something on YouTube where it's like the music theory of the music is really impressive, which I thought was really cool. But yeah, every track's a banger. I love the Asgore theme because that was my boss, and I'm sure people love Megalovania or like the Sans boss music because that was their boss for when they killed everything. I think most people in 2015 when this came out went out and they just went, "Oh, it's another RPG," and they went around killing everything, and they learned the hard way like what happens when you kill everything. I think like
play it again.
The thing that's interesting though, to get the true genocide ending, you have to kill everything. Like you can get the neutral ending by not killing everything, but if you basically go out of your way to kill every single thing you meet in the tutorial area and you kill Toriel, that's what triggers you to start on the true genocide path.
Right.
Oh, there's the spider bake sale's another interesting thing where there's a boss that's in the spider bake sale. And you can leave money in the web for the spider bake sale, and it helps you in a boss fight later if you do.
Okay.
Another really interesting thing is, like, in that boss fight, gold is really important because you can pay gold to make her attacks. You can pay gold to make her attacks less impactful, which I think is a really interesting way to... F4 stands for 4 frogs.
I just find it interesting. It's like almost every boss fight is both unique and like interacts with the rest of the game in some way or some respects. And it's like it's not just like a lot of other games that really mess up like bosses especially. And it's like, well, it's just a harder enemy, right? It's like, well, no, that's not very interesting.
But I think
whereas
like
this,
because one thing I wanted to mention was like in the first couple of hours, I was playing it and. In 2021, I played a game called Everhood, which is essentially a similar idea to Undertale, where it's like an RPG where you can kill characters through like these boss battle sort of things. And I was playing that and it reminded me of like the Daniel Mullins thing that I found before, where I think if you played Inscription first, and then you went back and played Pony Island, and you went back and played The Hex, it would be like, oh man, the gameplay for these games is not great, but like I see the ideas still there. That like he had that really cool idea sort of thing.
Yeah, I would recommend
like
almost
that's
a
like
release at playing
the first couple of hours of playing this, I was like, man, Everhood does this so much. Like the game, like the actual gameplay loop of Everhood is a lot better in my opinion. So that's why I was like, oh, like it's weird playing them in this order, unfortunately. But I think Undertale does offer a lot of stuff that Everhood doesn't offer, despite, you know, having a more simple battle system compared to how great Everhood's one is. So it's definitely still worth playing. So yeah, I've wanted to play Undertale for the longest time, and I'm really glad I played it. It was recommended to me by a friend. I don't even know if she played the game herself, because I assume she may have just watched somebody else play it, because that's what a lot of people do these days. Some people just watch more people play games than they play themselves.
I will say for me personally, it's like this was like a game like I have like massive respect for, but like I have no interest in playing myself. I just find it interesting. Like I think I watched all the stuff like your stuff like near the end, like after the neutral ending.
Well, I think like
the true
like talking to Papyrus and doing cooking lessons with Undyne and stuff. All that stuff's amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah.
There's stuff I've never seen before, because I'm someone who just refuses to watch anything about a game that I'm interested in, because I really want to experience it myself. But yeah. Undertale, I think it's really, really good. And I would recommend pretty much anyone to try playing Undertale. I think it's a game that anyone could get into. It's quite accessible, considering how simplistic it can be. I mean, some of the boss fights can be very tricky, especially if you go that genocide run. And I was, I had quite a few attempts on Asgore, the final boss. Also, Flowey. Okay, this guy, I'm in spoiler territory. It's a secret horror game, guys. When you finish the neutral run, and I had no fucking idea about the Flowey boss fight that corrupts your game when you finish the neutral ending.
I knew about the Sans and the Asgore boss, but I'd never actually seen the Flowey like proper boss fight. So
that boss fight is so good, and that was something I'd never experienced until I played the game. So I'm so glad I got to see that. That was so cool. The way he just like. That was so Daniel Mullins, though, when he just starts, like, changing your save files and stuff like that. Which I was like...
Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, shout out to Toby Fox, shout out to Undertale, this is really cool. And I was talking about some of the stuff that happened earlier in the story about the war of the humans and the monsters. If you've played Undertale and you're interested in that stuff, Deltarune goes into that stuff. Because there's a...
it's not the sequel, it's sort of sequel, right?
It's a prequel. It's a prequel.
Yeah.
Deltarune is a prequel to Undertale, and
but, like,
I believe
plays differently though. It's not.
You can play Chapter 1 and 2 for free on Steam right now, but it's not like fully out sort of thing. I think I do want to, because it came out last year. I think it was the first chapters of Deltarune. Chapters 3 to 5 are still in development and will release like as a paid thing, but the first 2 are out for free. I might wait until like the full of Deltarune comes out and then jump into it, but I really want to try Deltarune now, because this game has been really, really fun. And like immediately after I finished the true neutral and the true pacifist run, I was like, ooh, do I go into a genocide run? And I was like, you know what? Let's save that for another time. Let's move on to something else. So I span a wheel, Tony. I span a wheel.
Spin the wheel.
Oh, it's a Sarah Hayden. Oh!
I like how it was very close.
This is the bad ending. It's the bad ending. Alright, so one thing I'll say about the wheel so far is it's been a genuinely really interesting psychological experiment where it turns out if you ask a lot of your friends to recommend you a game, they will recommend you a game based on something that they've genuinely enjoyed in their life, and they just were like, well, if I've enjoyed this, somebody else will probably enjoy this, and it's been quite a cool, wholesome experience. And then you have friends who just want to see the world burn.
Yeah.
So those are the pacifists. This is the genocide, and then we have the true neutrals like Tony, who selected a random game that he has no idea what it is.
I was interested in seeing what the game was.
But if you don't know, Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy is a game. I'm going to read the store description, Tony. A game I made for a certain kind of person to hurt them. Which I think is a really, really fair way to put it.
Can I just say, I absolutely love the voiceover of this game. Like,
yeah.
Again, never played it, but it's one that, like, I just watch people who streamed it and stuff and like made videos on it. I just find it so hilarious. Like, it's just so funny. Like, it's my.
I think
it's my humor.
I'll go into like the broader ideas of Bennett Foddy and the idea of like rage bait or streamer bait games like Jump King or Alt F4 and stuff like that. But I think Bennett Foddy like kind of started the wave of these games, but I think every game that came after it just did not understand what Bennett Foddy was trying to do with this game, and kind of it's interesting to see like an entire genre of games spawn from one game where they just truly didn't understand what the first game was about, and just took a core aspect that came as a side effect of the game. Anyway, this tree is really fucking hard to play. So my first thoughts of Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy was, fuck my friend for suggesting this game, first up. I mean, so the idea of the wheel was you would select a game that I own to play, and my friend Saunders said, oh, if I buy you the game, you play it. And I said, well, why not? Sure. So he bought me Getting Over It just so I would try and play this game as a way to try and punish me, I guess. I mean, so far, I would say 2 people chose violence. One was Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy, and then also on the wheel is my friend Andy. He suggested like 5 different things. He was like, play the entirety of Call of Duty, but only with your knife, or 100% GTA 5, or fucking speedrun Among Us. And I was like, what the fuck are these suggestions? Like, but yeah, anyway. I think the most frustrating part of the game for me, legitimately, was getting over the first tree. And
then you just kicked yourself back.
I think, like, in the beginning, it seems very random. It seems very hard to do anything. And it seems like it's very frustrating, I think. Like, the first tree in the first 5 minutes of playing this game, I would say, is the most frustrated I've been playing the game.
Right. But then you start getting over it.
But I think, and I'm going to say this now, I think fundamentally, if you can get past the first tree in this game, I think anyone can complete it. Right. I think it's really interesting. This game is really interesting, and I started to feel that, I think after the first day, I got about halfway up the mountain, and I wasn't sure about the game. But then I started playing it again on day 2, and I really started to like the game. I think the game can be quite cathartic. The idea of the feeling of climbing a mountain or overcoming a challenge. I think once you get the swing game, like I will say now, my tagline for Getting Over It, it's a secret rhythm game. In the way that climbing up the mountain, it's like learning the rhythm of swings.
Yeah, and you're like understanding momentum, like how the game, its own weird momentum in a way. But
and I think there's some. So I think even before because spoiler alert for me, I guess I ended up getting over it. I ended up completing the game because I wasn't sure going into this. Like when someone suggested it, I said to myself, "Look, there may be a chance that I'm not good enough to beat this game." Like legitimately, I've seen a lot of people play this, and I know a lot of people have quit playing it. You can tell by the Steam stats, like 8% of people who've bought this game have completed it based on the achievement. So also it's a really interesting statistic as well, because out of the 8% who completed it once went on to I think 5% of them went on to. Well, sorry, but only 3% of them didn't go on to complete it again, which is a really interesting
Oh,
statistic.
okay, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it liked it that much.
I'm probably fucking up statistics, but it seems like a lot of people who complete this once were more willing to complete it again. I think it just goes to show you the kind of person who can bring themselves to overcome the challenge is much more likely to be able to do it again or overcome other challenges in their
Yeah.
life, sort of thing. Like, I think for a lot of people that I've seen playing this, I saw a lot of raging, but I would say, without blowing my own trumpet, I would say a lot of the time I was playing this, I was incredibly calm. I don't think I ever really raged playing this game at all. I was streaming it to several people.
I feel like I don't know if this is true, but like I feel like the people who originally when this game came out who like made videos or streamed it like kind of were deliberately raging.
You would say it was like over exaggerated.
Yeah, which is fine. Like it's content, right? And it was funny. But I do feel like
I do
some
think
of it...
people work because there is moments in the game where you will lose loads of progress and it
Oh,
can be
yeah.
frustrating.
I think that's probably genuine, but like I feel like then you then see people like just like raging, like just like changing tactics to like be super aggressive, like kind of like in spite of the game sort of thing. It's like, well, I feel like that's kind of a bit
Let's go into like
exaggerated.
the backstory of why is it called Game Over with Bennett Foddy? Who is Bennett Foddy? Bennett Foddy's a really interesting developer. Someone like Toby Fox, Daniel Mullin, stuff like that. People with come out of the indie scene and just make really interesting stuff. Like so, you've probably played it at some point. A game called QWOP, which is the idea that you have to keep running with these really awkward controls of QWOP in order to get your person to move, and it creates this interesting experience. He also made another game that I absolutely adore called Ape Out, which is like this amazing like Hotline Miami ape game with what's the word? Jazz music that changes based on the gameplay, which I'm like, this is really interesting.
But one of your top games of a certain year, wasn't it? I can't remember. Like, when did it
I
come
really
out?
enjoyed Ape Out.
Yeah,
I didn't play it when it came out of the year. It was one of my games I played that year. It was a lot of fun. But the idea was that he had this friend who'd created this B game called Sexy Hiking, where you move the hammer with the mouse, and that is it. You're trying to I believe you are trying to climb with this hammer with the mouse, and it was like a really frustrating experience, and didn't really get it. And basically the narration of this game just goes through all the design things he goes through while he's designing this game, and he's like, every time I put an obstacle in this game, I would realize that there it is, the tree symbolism. Yeah, so if you take it out, a lot of people never get past the first tree, but I think the first tree is a metaphorical and physical tree. Like, if you
it's like a branching path sort of thing for people.
Yeah, like fundamentally, if you can get past the first tree, then you probably can overcome any challenge that the game faced you, because it shows that you have the adaptability and the determination to keep going.
Yeah.
You just need to prove that to yourself, sort of thing. I went into this thinking it was going to be a rage bait game that I was going to quit, and I came out going, man, this game's got some really good philosophy in it. Like, there's lots of reference to this Diogenes, who I'm now like, man, I quite like this Diogenes guy. Like, Diogenes is kind of based when he goes around, just with a bunch. He's like homeless and he just goes around naked, masturbating everywhere with a bunch of wild dogs. And I'm just like, this guy's kind of based. This guy's kind of based. Yeah. But what you will learn through playing the game, like what I was saying before, was he was saying like every time he added an obstacle, he found it really hard to remove the obstacle, because he would go, well, this obstacle's really hard to get past, but then he would go, but isn't that the point? That
yeah,
you kind of have to overcome these obstacles? Why would I make it easier for people? And I think it is like a really interesting idea of overcoming a seemingly impossible challenge, but as soon as you start to get past some of the, I will say in quotation marks, checkpoints, you start to go, well, now that I know that I can make it this far, what's stopping me from making it a bit farther? And I think, like, I'm going to start talking about philosophy in the middle of a fucking tangent. I think fundamentally, like, once you realize that you can complete a challenge, that's when it's that's when you realize that nothing can really stop you apart from yourself, like the power of the mind, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is a really interesting. I like games that teach things, like especially philosophy ideas. Like there's great examples of this. Like Genital Jousting story mode is genuinely a really cool way of teaching people about toxic masculinity. Fallout, like the Fallout games, like Fallout New Vegas, is a great way to teach about different ideas in philosophy, like
and how to live and deal with it and live with other people.
and how different people live their lives and different factions deal with these sort of philosophical. If you've ever seen a show called Star Trek, I mean that's got some fantastic philosophy in it.
Yeah. I was gonna say with this game though, is like the other thing is like I think as well is like there's no checkpoints in real life, right? It's like you can be like knocked all the way down. There's like, but you know you can get back up. So why you like get back up?
Another thing
I think it's a good idea.
Another thing, because like at first the gameplay seems like it's designed at random, and to some points it might be, but the way the gameplay works is really cool because when you become more frustrated, you are more likely to fall further. So it's like subconsciously teaching you that getting angry about mistakes is bad, and that, you know, learning from the mistakes is the lesson you should be taking, and that when you get angry and you start to push harder and you're just trying to force through, you start to when you push harder, you're pushing yourself further away from the mountain, which makes it harder to climb. Which I think is really interesting. Which is a way that's unique to this game, where a game like Jump King that is just holding down the spacebar to jump, and then every cliff is designed so you fall off it, and then you go, oh, I fell off, this is frustrating. Like, I think my friend could have chosen any game as like, this game's really hard, and I want you to play this game because it's hard. And I think if you chose another game, I would have come out probably hating that game. But I'm glad he picked this one. I was a little disappointed he didn't pick Golfing Over It. There's a golf version of this called Golfing Over It, which I've never played.
Does it understand the concept of this game?
I don't know. I haven't seen anyone play it. I just know it exists.
Okay.
But yeah. It's cool because at first the way that you have to get around obstacles seems like, because I'd say the second big obstacle for the game is what's called oranges. There is a table with oranges on it, and if you need to climb up this really hard mountainside, and if you slip up once, you fall and you lose a lot of progress. I think this is one of the first times where the game goes, look, you need to progress here, and if you don't, then you're going to be punished. But essentially, as soon as you get past that section, you sort of get checkpointed into a new area where it's very hard to fall back that far. And there's like soft checkpoints, and then you get to the next one, which is the top hat jump. And to get up the top hat jump, there is a core mechanic that you need to understand in order to get past it. But once you've learnt it, then that pretty much helps you through all of the other obstacles in the game, where you get to a point where when you get to the final obstacle of the game, at that point the game's already taught you all of the mechanics that you need to know to get past it. Once you get to the top of the mountain, the game doesn't become harder, it becomes way easier. The more you play this game, the easier it gets. And I think that's the really interesting is, when you see people who've beat the game go back and beat it multiple times or keep playing over and over again, it's because the way the game's set up is once you've learned the mechanics, the game's a lot easier. And it goes to show you, like, if you practice and you just keep trying and you put, determination, you keep going, things can get easier and things will get easier, sort of thing. Like,
yeah.
I think this is a really interesting game. And I don't think that a lot of people will play this game. And I don't know if everybody should play this game, especially if you're not... I would say a lot of people probably aren't ready for getting over it mentally. Where I feel
I
like
think,
a lot of people could benefit from playing Getting Over It, but I
yeah.
think a lot of people wouldn't understand the broader context of getting over it in their current mental state. If they just went into it in like a bad state and they just raged and they were
I,
like, "Why would anybody play this? It's just designed to make you fall. What's the point of this?" sort of thing, you know?
yeah, I think as well, like not everyone will get something or get the feeling that you got out of it. Like I feel like
Yeah,
it's just not the experience for everyone. Like even someone who's like who wants to, like mountain climb like, might not get the same experience you did, for example,
yeah,
even though it's like kind of a similar thing that you're like trying to get over it and like
yeah.
push you to the limits and sort of stuff. But yeah, I think I don't know, like it's kind of hard to. I guess
These are
you're
two
saying
very
you
like
recommend it,
interesting
but
games. Um,
how do you know if it's for you?
you don't until you play it. I think a lot of
Yeah,
people who talk shit when they see other people play Getting Over It, I would suggest they try playing it for 5 minutes before they have the "okay, I can talk shit on people playing it" badge. Because it's so funny, like seeing people being like, "Oh, you just need to do this or you just need to do
oh
this,"
yeah,
when they
yeah.
just do not understand how like difficult the physics of the game can be, especially to someone who hasn't played it or is
I
a new
just love
player.
watching. I just love watching. I don't know, like the like you like climbing up and then suddenly you get this like like you do the wrong move. You just have like this
Hmm.
jump too far back and you just fall really far down. For some reason, I just find really funny.
I think
Um,
like so. I would say like there was maybe some other games that came before this, but I think the big one was Bennett Foddy, Getting Over It, and it turns out that live streaming is a really popular thing, and it turns out that there's this huge catharsis from seeing other people fail,
mm,
where Bennett Foddy is a game that is all about the person playing it learning to accept mistakes and practice and build determination and keep going. Where if you're streaming it, everyone else watching it is not going to understand that, and they're going to just
no,
see it's funny to watch people fall, which I think is this huge like dichotomy between you know the two groups, which I think is really interesting. And I think what happened was the game Bennett Foddy became notorious, but became notorious for the fact that it was a hard game, and games went, well, people want to watch streams of people falling. Let's
yeah,
design games where people fall, and it's really frustrating. And there's simple mechanics that don't, reward you for playing more. It's just kind of random sort of thing.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I feel like a lot of these
It-
games, like the Jump Kings or the Alt F4s, or these what I would call streamer rage bait or streamer bait games, um, that genuinely didn't understand what Bennett Foddy was trying to do, but just
yeah,
saw one of the results of other people watching what he was trying to do, which I think is really interesting in itself because it's not something you see a lot of gaming. Um,
yeah.
they should get some
It's
psychologists to study this game. I'd be really interested to see like
yeah.
a study on getting over Bennett Foddy. He says like playtesters, the median time to finish was like 5 hours, which I think took
Oh, really?
7 hours to finish my first run.
Right.
Um,
I do. I think like the I don't know what you call it. The narration of the game, I do find very interesting. Like I feel like
hmm,
I don't know. Like I don't have like I want to like play this game,
right.
and I do completely appreciate like it's like very very difficult.
Well,
Until it's not, I suppose.
until I was semi forced to play it through the wheel, I had no interest
Yeah.
in playing this. But I'm
Right.
after I've played it, I'm glad that I played it. But I don't think my friend didn't want me to play this because of the things I'm talking about. He wanted
No.
me to play it
No.
because he went, "Oh, getting over it. That's the rage bait game. You're going to rage. This'll be funny." So I think it's really
Yeah. I think
interesting
that's what it was. Yeah.
what
hundred
happened,
percent.
what the intended effect was, and what happened. Um,
But we trying to say is you got over it.
my mental is too strong, guys. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
Um, because over the past couple of years, I haven't really talked about this on the podcast too much, but like I've made huge changes in my life. You can tell by looking at the webcam of previous episodes. I have
Mm-hmm.
put in a lot of determination and self-improvement. I started biking like 2 or 3 years ago, and I lost like an incredible amount of weight, sort of thing. So like I'm used to it at this point. Like I'm okay with trying something new, and if I don't succeed straight away, keep going,
So
keep
yeah,
practicing, keep the
yeah.
determination up. Um, so yeah, I think it's a really interesting game. The game doesn't have too much music. It's sort of just atmospheric, and then sometimes he will play like songs about you falling when you fall, like going down or something
Yeah,
like that. But I
I quite
found
like that.
like it was quite. This is probably a good podcast game, honestly. Um, it's like a good game to be listening to something else do. I was what I was listening to while I was playing this. I had the music turned off because it rarely plays music. Um, I had the narration on and the ambient sounds, like the pick and the stuff, so I could hear that. But I was listening to the Superliminal soundtrack, which is essentially just
Oh,
like
nice.
elevator jazz music, and then I was
Yeah.
listening to the Minecraft soundtrack, and I found that quite. There is something because I think people see this and they go, "Yeah, it can be quite frustrating," but there's actually something quite um, almost cathartic or satisfying with the rhythm of the mouse movements when you get into like that flow state of moving, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying like sometimes when you climb up the side of the building and stuff, it can be like a secret rhythm game where it's like swing, 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 and like I have an affinity for movement games, and this
Well, I'll
is
say like
at
a lot of
times
movement
kind
games,
of a
like
movement game.
well, some of a lot of movement games are like you kind of do it to a rhythm, like you get into like and you understand like how the momentum works of the game, like you get used to it and you master it from that. So I think in a
Yeah.
way, different kind of rhythm than like a rhythm game, obviously. But
So we've had two
yeah,
games which have subverted expectations. So we've had
and
Undertale
they're not
again.
PMR new games.
Yeah, so we've had like Undertale, a game I went into knowing it was going to set my expectations, but I still had an enjoyable experience. And then we had Getting Over It, a game I knew what what it was going to do to me, but I came out the other end going, you know what, I wasn't expecting to feel this way or to learn these lessons about this game playing it. So it was
Hmm.
even going in knowing what the game was, it still subverted my expectations, and I think that's a really interesting idea. Like, because I understand like people like playing challenging games, and I get that. Like,
Yeah.
people like the rage bait games, but I think there's better ways to do like challenging games that are still more rewarding. Like the idea of I think Cuphead's one that I played recently. I really enjoyed, where it's an extremely rewarding game, but it's also really fun to play and has very good mechanics and story and art. And I know people love the Souls games, and I think that's another great way of having a challenging game where you feel like you can overcome a challenge, but also have some rewarding story and atmosphere and lore and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
It's
Um,
not just hard for the sake of it, right? It's actually
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge in the first tree is the biggest challenge. It's the first and final challenge to beating the game is the tree. The oranges is a challenge in its you know learning to not give up when you get knocked down, and then the anvil is fundamentally learning a core mechanic of how to like essentially like get that high up sort of thing. And it took me a
Mm.
really long time to get that. But once I understood that, I was able to just jump through the game. And it's really,
Oh,
really
right.
interesting
Okay.
that way. But yeah, two really interesting games. And I'll hopefully remember to record all of the wheel spin reactions. I just recorded the next wheel spin reaction, and it was quite an interesting one. And I'll give context when that comes up. So make sure to check out that one. And we'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.